Okay, let's unpack this. You know that feeling, right?
Yeah.
You've diligently studied something, read all the articles, you've absorbed the knowledge, and you feel like you truly get it. But then when it's time to actually do it, especially in a new way, maybe publicly, your brain just, well, it freezes. It's like hitting a sudden invisible wall. So today we're doing a deep dive into that very specific fear. It can be quite paralyzing sometimes, the fear of speaking a new language, English, in this particular case when you've really only ever learned it from books or apps academically. We've pulled together some insights from some really fascinating material. This includes some compelling excerpts from Speaking English, From Fear to Fluency, which has this incredibly candid story from someone known as designer JK. And we've also got some recent cognitive psychology research on, performance anxiety that ties in quite well. All right, so our mission for this deep dive is basically to give you a shortcut to understanding why that brain freeze happens, and maybe more importantly, how you can start to push past that barrier. We'll be pulling out some surprising, actionable insights, drawing a lot from designer JK's very personal account. It felt like a public failure to them at the time, but it ended up being this huge moment of growth. And honestly, it's about more than just learning a language. It's about confronting that fear with any new skill you're trying to master.
Yeah, what's fascinating here is just how common this is, this performance anxiety. It happens when learning pretty much any new skill, even when you totally understand it intellectually. You know it cold. We see it all the time, right? Musicians facing a stage for the first time, athletes under pressure, even public speakers who've rehearsed perfectly. Designer JK's story really shines a light on that universal psychological gap between knowing something and actually doing it. And it resonates so deeply with what the research on cognitive overload tells us too.
It absolutely does. Yeah, designer JK's journey really stuck with me because, well, it's just so relatable. They shared that for years, they had been diligently studying English. I mean, watching videos, reading texts, even, passing grammar tests, the whole academic 9 yards. But here's the kicker, and this is the part that probably sounds familiar to a lot of you listening. They had never actually spoken English in real life. Like, not once. Then one day, they're traveling, and the moment arrives. A really simple situation. Ordering food at a fast food counter. The worker smiles, right? And designer JK knew exactly what they wanted to say in their head. Hi, can I have a chicken sandwich, please? Simple. But then just pure panic. Their brain just completely shut down. Hands sweating, heart pounding. You know the feeling. And what actually came out instead was something like, me, want chicken eat now. I think we've all had those moments where our brain just completely abandons us, right? Whether it's trying to order food in another country or, heck, remembering your own name in front of a crowd.
Oh, absolutely. It's that universal human experience of performance under pressure, isn't it?
Wow.
Designer JK's story, it really reminds us that even when you intellectually know all the rules, the stage fright can just hijack everything. That feeling of humiliation, as they describe it, it's incredibly potent. Precisely because that disconnect between what you know, and what you can actually do in the moment is so stark. It's not just embarrassment. It's this deep-seated frustration with your own capabilities or perceived lack thereof.
Yeah, and that day was genuinely a turning point for them. It led to this critical realization. Speaking English is fundamentally different from studying English. You can have all the grammar knowledge in the world, understand everything you hear, listen to podcasts like this one every day, but you can still feel completely blocked when it comes to actually producing the language yourself in real time. That ability to comprehend, it just doesn't automatically translate into the ability to speak.
And that's where the core insight really comes through. Designer JK realized the problem wasn't really their vocabulary. They knew the words. They had the pieces. The core issue, as the source points out so clearly, was their fear, specifically the fear of being wrong. They were just too worried about speaking perfectly, hitting every grammar point, instead of simply trying to, communicate, get the message across. And what's fascinating is how this fear of imperfection often tangles up with a fear of not being understood at all. They kind of feed each other, right? Creating this vicious cycle that holds learners back really in any skill.
Okay, so after that pretty humbling experience at the counter, designer JK basically had two clear options. Either, give up, stop trying to speak English forever, or use that failure, that embarrassing moment, as a stepping stone to actually grow. Thankfully, they chose the second path, turning that moment of deep embarrassment into a really powerful catalyst for improvement. But what were the specific things they did? What changes did they actually make?
Well, what's truly insightful from designer JK's experience isn't just the usual advice like, oh, practice more. It's more specific. It was about a very deliberate shift from seeking perfection to focusing on communication first. The book details how they adopted this kind of low-stakes experimentation approach. So instead of aiming for, grand conversations, they deliberately engaged in tiny micro conversations, things like just ordering coffee or asking for simple directions, focusing only on getting the message across, however messy it felt.
That's really interesting. So less focus on perfect grammar, more just getting it out there, making the connection.
Exactly. And crucially, they started small. That seems key. They began just talking to themselves in English at home, narrating their day, recording their voice, maybe repeating phrases they heard in movies. Then, and this was critical, they joined some online speaking rooms, places where everyone else was also learning. That created a much safer space for those messy interactions you mentioned. The whole focus shifted away from chasing some elusive idea of perfection towards just aiming for functional fluency, getting the job done. It was about creating a consistent, messy input-output loop. You speak, maybe you stumble, then you analyze what happened, maybe internally, maybe you get feedback, you adjust, and then you speak again, soon. That loop, that's the real accelerator for learning.
Right. And slowly but surely, the confidence started to build. It
Mhm.
sounds like the big lesson was that making mistakes isn't some sign of weakness or failure, but actually an essential, necessary step toward achieving real fluency.
Precisely. It's an iterative process, isn't it? Where each error provides valuable, immediate feedback. That feedback allows for refinement and actual progress. It sounds almost counterintuitive. But the more you allow yourself to be imperfect, to make those mistakes, the faster you actually improve. The psychological research on deliberate practice really backs this up. You absolutely have to be willing to push your boundaries and make mistakes if you want to truly learn and grow.
And look at them now, right? Designer JK speaks English confidently in public, in videos, even hosts podcasts in English, apparently. It's quite a remarkable transformation, and it all stemmed from that one really embarrassing moment ordering food. So, for you listening, if you've ever had a moment like Designer JK's where you feel embarrassed or stuck or just frustrated, there are some really actionable takeaways here. First, let's talk about the mindset shift. Designer JK's story really highlights the power of reframing failure. So instead of seeing that chicken eat now moment as proof they couldn't do it, they saw it as a stark lesson. Speaking is an action. It's a physical skill, not just passive knowledge. It's something you develop by doing, not just by knowing stuff.
Exactly. And this leads directly to the next insight, the huge value of low-stakes experimentation.
Hmm.
Like we said, designer JK didn't immediately try to deliver ed talk in English, right?
Mm.
They deliberately sought out small, safe opportunities to speak those online groups, simple transactions.
Mm.
This is where that input-output loop really thrives. You try a small thing, get immediate feedback, even if it's just comprehension, and you refine. It's about minimizing the perceived risk, the fear factor of making a mistake.
That's so smart. Yeah. And another powerful takeaway seems to be embracing the messiness of it all. Designer JK didn't wait until their English felt perfect. Because, let's be honest, when does anything ever feel perfect? They understood or learned that fluency comes from wading through those awkward sentences and grammatical errors. It's about prioritizing communication over correctness, especially when you're starting out or feeling stuck.
And finally, there's a key insight that really ties into the broader psychology of learning. It's the power of turning that fear into fuel. Designer JK didn't let that initial brain freeze stop them for good. Instead, they recognized the discomfort, that awful feeling, as a signal for growth, a sign they were pushing outside their comfort zone. And they used that internal push to motivate consistent, messy practice instead of letting the fear paralyze them.
It really comes down to this. Your English or whatever new skill you're learning, it doesn't have to be perfect. It just has to be real. You're not a robot, you're a learner. And that's okay. Every mistake really is a lesson. Every sentence you manage to get out, however imperfect it feels, is a step forward. And honestly, if you're brave enough to simply try to put yourself out there in those small, sometimes messy ways, well, you're already winning.
Absolutely. And if we connect this back to the bigger picture, designer JK's journey really illuminates how true mastery and confidence, they don't come from avoiding errors. They don't come from striving for some kind of elusive perfection. They come from embracing mistakes, seeing them as essential, unavoidable steps in the learning process. It's through those moments of imperfection, through that consistent input-output loop, that real lasting growth actually occurs.
So here's something to think about as we wrap up. What small, maybe potentially messy or awkward step could you take today? A step to move past a similar brain freeze or fear of imperfection in an area you're currently trying to master. Doesn't have to be language, could be anything. Just something small to get you started.